At 1-800-Flowers.com, we know that connections are at the heart of being human. Whether celebrating life's joys or comforting during tough times, 1-800-Flowers helps you express what words can't. For nearly 50 years, millions have trusted 1-800-Flowers to deliver thoughtful gifts that help create lasting bonds. Because it's more than just a gift. It's your way of showing you care. Visit 1-800-Flowers.com/WWO and connect today. That's 1-800-Flowers.com/WWO.
This episode brought to you by Progressive Insurance. Do you ever find yourself playing the budgeting game? Shifting a little money here, a little there, and hoping it all works out? Well, with the Name Your Price tool from Progressive, you can get a better budgeter and potentially lower your insurance bill too. You tell Progressive what you want to pay for car insurance, and they'll help find you options within your budget. Try it today at Progressive.com. Progressive Casualty Insurance Company and Affiliates. Price and coverage match limited by state law. Not available in all states.
Football is so much more than a single season. It's something you look forward to 365 days of the year. Just like Nationwide is so much more than a great insurance company. They're one of America's largest financial services companies, too. For your insurance and financial needs, Nationwide is on your side. Nationwide Investment Services Corporation, member FINRA, Columbus, Ohio.
Looking for these better days.
It is Football Friday, November 14th. I'm Scott Seidenberg. Here's what you need to know to make today a better day. He called it, folks. Mackenzie Rivers nails the exact score of Thursday Night Football. And Mackenzie Rivers is with me here on this episode of Football Friday of Better Day, presented by FanDuel. Mac, you called it. 27-14, the final score. The Patriots beat the New York Jets. We did not cash our same-game parlay, although pretty darn close. The Jets get a push on the number of 13. If you took the plus 13, they get a push. If you took plus 12.5, you lost. But it's kind of one of those where Fez says no excuse because she had plenty of time to get the plus 13, right?
Yep.
So you get
even
the push.
Some 13.5s out there, a couple
yeah.
of them.
The Jets go under their team total of 14.5, so we cash that aspect of it. Drake May does go over his passing yards. He was 25 of 34 for 281 yards and a touchdown. And Breece Hall, 2 catches for only 6 yards.
We said over 1.5 receptions, right? I think we were on over 1.5 receptions.
It was 2.5 receptions was his prop, and his yardage was 15.5. He had 1 catch for 8 yards, and then 1 catch for -2. And the Jets,
that was one of their more successful passing plays.
Yeah. And the Jets, of course, were in a position to cover this game until Justin Fields fumbled the first snap of a possession, and then the Patriots kicked the field goal to make it a 24-14 game into a 27-14 game. And that was a great result for one of our followers, Mackenzie. I want to give a shout out because several people did tweet into to us. Let's see, Zach, Richard. I'm looking at my Twitter from last night. Four Finger, even Steven. A lot of people tweeting at us saying, "Hey, didn't Matt call it? Didn't Matt call it?" Yeah, Matt called it. But how about a special shout out for Sitzler Sunday? Now it's Sitzler. It's not Sizzler. Hey, Shooter, thought you said we were going to Sizzler. Sitzler Sunday tweeted out the ticket. He said Mac effing called it, and he bet the exact final score, 27-14. Mackenzie plus 20,000. He cashed. That means if you bet $10, you turned it into $2,000. Imagine if you bet $100, you could have turned it into $20,000. Well, let's not go there. But
the math is astounding.
Yes, a $10 bet wins you $2,000. So shout out Sitzler Sunday for playing the exact score result on Thursday Night Football. And shout out Mackenzie Rivers, who nailed it. 27-14 Patriots.
A little bit of an idiot savant moment because I was talking about the FanDuel same game parlay.
No, it was a little bit of an idiot moment, you mean.
And I'm like, he's not going to get over, like the Jets can't score more than 14.5 points. So I love that. But I kind of like them to cover. How can that happen? Well, I was looking at my screen. I think might have had a different book up that had 13.5. And I'm like, okay, well, 27-14. Because the Patriots, pretty good team now. They went over their season win total, 9-2. They score 27 every game. And the Jets, great spot for them to shock the world, quote unquote, but they can't score more than 14 points. So it felt like it couldn't be any other score, and it wasn't.
Yeah, because listen, we like the Jets to cover this game. It wound up being a push of the 13, right? We like the Jets to cover this game. We also like the game to go under. And so we were thinking, how do the Jets cover, but the game still goes under? And to your credit, Mackenzie, you gave the exact score of the game going under and it being a cover for the Jets. And that's the perfect script. And you know something? I know it's a plus 20,000 bet. I know it's not a smart bet. Okay,
Hey,
I know.
$4,000 is $4,000.
It's not a smart bet. But like,
generally,
because,
by that you mean the vig in those bets is preposterous. Where out of 100 people that go to the roulette table, maybe they each lose $5 on average after an hour. This is more like $25. This is they highway robbery, but still, 27-14 happened.
Yeah, exactly. But what I'm trying to say is, as much as like
sometimes it's a tilted table, you know.
Exactly. As much as it's like a stupid bet, it's a bad bet. It's not a plus EV bet. But if we thought about it, how do the Jets cover and the game goes under? This is exactly the score in which it has to happen. So, man,
2 touchdowns for the Jets, 3 and 2 for the Patriots.
Yep. I wish we would have done it. But we didn't. But it's okay.
But shout out to what? Even Steven?
No, Seltzer Sunday. Seltzer
Sunday is going to be Champagne Sunday coming up after $4,000 cash.
Now he can afford to go to Sizzler.
He's almost even on the year now.
Now he can afford to go to Sizzler, right? So
hot
he can change the name to Sizzler. You know why I wasn't that upset about not
your team
cashing?
Losing an 8th game out of 10?
Yeah, well, forget about that, Mackenzie. I mean, being a Jets fan is just whatever. But I wasn't upset about not cashing that because yesterday was a good day for us, Mackenzie. Yesterday was a good day for the sportsbook account. Yesterday, dare I say, was a great day for the sportsbook account because Aaron Judge wins his 2nd consecutive Most Valuable Player award. Shout out to all those who have been following my journey all along.
How many times did you dip in? I know we defended it at minus 180 and plus 180 and minus 300, but how are you invested?
The official portfolio was 1 wager at minus 150, 1 wager at even money, and a 3rd wager at plus 125. So there were 3 wagers placed on Aaron Judge to win the Most Valuable Player award, and this is one, and the largest one was at the even money price, and that was the one where when he went down with the injury, and he went to the 10-day IL, and he went from minus 550 at that point down to even money. Like, it was like so stupid, and I'm screaming, and I go on VSiN, and I'm screaming to anybody that would listen, is this a complete overreaction because this was only a precautionary move because the Yankees had a logjam at the designated hitter spot in Giancarlo Stanton, and that Judge was only going to miss the 10 days, and he would return. And yes, Raleigh did make it interesting with the 60 home runs, right? But Aaron Judge still had one of the greatest historical seasons you will ever have in Major League Baseball. Like, I almost tweeted out last night, and I didn't because, you know what, I'm done with it, right? I'm done with – we won, okay? There's no reason to even gloat anymore. But
fight is over.
But there were some people online last night and, like, reputable media outlets, too, that were like, Cal Raleigh becomes the first player to hit 60 home runs and not win the MVP. Like, you know, it's like – and I felt like tweeting out, do you understand that that's the only thing you could have said about Raleigh not winning, right? Where if Judge would have not won the MVP, we could have brought up countless of historical stats that Judge would have been the first player to accomplish those and not win the MVP, right? So it's like I said, you know what? Don't gloat, Scott. You got your win. Let's celebrate in quiet, and let's watch the Jets lose 27-14 on Thursday Night Football.
2 players have done what he did just from an OPS perspective. Aaron Judge did it 2 years ago when he hit 62 home runs. It was a slightly better season. And Barry Bonds, who many people consider, for whatever reason, the best player of all time. It would have been bet. And I also think we learned this. LA Dodgers versus Toronto Blue Jays was legendary. Everyone will remember that. They'll tell your grandkids about it. One of the great series of all time. I don't remember any Seattle Mariners games this year. No one's watching Seattle Mariners games on the West Coast. Not that big of a deal.
Yes. So that's it for the non-football discussion here on the pod. But we did have to acknowledge it. We did have to celebrate it, and
Yes,
plenty more to celebrate with some other results. But go to the picks page up on BetterDay.com, and I got some good tweets that people are loving the databases as well. Now, listen, there will be an announcement coming up soon about the website and everything that we offer, but I will save that for a different time because, Mackenzie, it's a Football Friday, and we have lots and lots of NFL to discuss. And joining us here for another special Football Friday episode is the mad journalist himself. Chris Dell is back with us from bettingpredators.com. Chris was Fantasy Pros' most accurate fantasy football drafter a couple of seasons ago, still ranks amongst one of the top fantasy analysts out there, and we're happy to have him aboard here at BetterDay.com to provide some prop analysis. There will be a prop sheet that will be sent out probably tomorrow as we get ready for NFL props and more things become available, but Chris always does this on his website, bettingpredators.com, so you can check that out. And he joins me and Mackenzie here on this episode of Better Day for a Football Friday. Chris, thanks so much for hopping aboard, and let's jump right into the schedule here for NFL Week 11 Sunday, which gets started bright and early in Madrid, Spain. That's right, the NFL's International Series continues with a kickoff in Madrid between the Commanders and the Dolphins. Mackenzie, we know the trends all the time with the international games and how favorites do in international games. Would this be one where you would lean towards that trend continuing?
I don't mind the Dolphins here, but no, I don't think it fits the trend. When you look at big favorites, you can separate it into different buckets because, yes, you're a favorite. You're north of 0 on the number line or south of 0, depending on how you want to look at it. But that doesn't mean you're material different from a team that's a 2-point dog or a 2-point favorite. If you just say 3.5 or greater, those teams are 60% ATS in all neutral site games. Great bet. 2.5, I think maybe you lean that way in a tiebreaker, but it doesn't get me to the window. The Commanders are interesting as they've lost 4 straight games by 20 points. They're only the 4th team since 1989, as far as I can go back in this database, that's ever been that putrid. For what it's worth, teams that have been that bad are prone to bounce back. If you say you're negative 80 the last 4 games, you're 58% ATS since 2012. How the Commanders do it, I don't know, but this is generally the buy low spot on a team like them.
It feels like that. Chris, when you look at what this Commanders offense is capable of doing with Marcus Mariota at quarterback now instead of Jaden Daniels, any differences that you have to factor in? Any players that either have their stock rise up or have their stock fall down because of the change in this offense?
Yeah, I mean, we've seen enough of Marcus Mariota this year to where it's not going to be anything brand new. I think the main things to note here are that obviously Terry McLaurin's still out. We saw Treylon Burks actually be one of the leading target getters, but he's now out with an injury, so it's going to be down to guys like Robbie Chosen-Anderson, obviously Deebo Samuel, Zach Ertz. I expect them to mix in a decent bit. I think this should be a pretty good back and forth because both defenses are near the bottom 10 of the league in pretty much all categories. When you look at it, the Dolphins are one of the worst in the league at fantasy adjusted points allowed to tight ends. They've been very bad to running backs as well. And then when you look at the running back position, the Commanders are also in there. They're giving up points to everybody, quarterbacks, running backs, wide receivers. I do have both Tua Tagovailoa and Marcus Mariota higher in my fantasy rankings than consensus this week. So I like both of them as streamers. So I definitely think that, to me, given the poor defensive play here, I think could lend to some overs in the passing department. I'd specifically maybe look at Tua passing props. And I think just overall, like, you know, it's going to be Deebo, it's going to be Ertz. I think receptions for those guys are definitely worth a look here as well. I think there's a chance that the Dolphins could like run all over the Commanders, and they might not need to throw a ton. So I think if I had to look receiver overs, I'd rather look for Washington playing catch-up mode because I don't trust their run game as much than the other side.
Up on FanDuel right now, Deebo is at 4.5 receptions, heavily juiced to the over. Zach Ertz, 3.5 receptions, also heavily juiced to the over. Which one of those props do you like more?
I would take the lower number, but I also it's pretty juiced, so I actually would prefer to see Robbie Chosen if they release his line, because Jalen Lane, he's the third receiver I see listed, and he barely played at all last week. When you look at the routes data, Robbie ran 9 routes compared to just 7 for Lane. Burks was a borderline full-time receiver. They were rotating guys in and out. But basically, Ertz 22 routes, Debo 21. The next highest was Burks. I think Robbie Chosen, like a veteran receiver, he's been on a lot of different teams. I think he'll catch a couple balls in this game. And if we see like a 1.5 line for him, since he hasn't done much in a few years, I think that might be my favorite low-hanging fruit to attack in terms of the Commanders' receivers props.
Devon Achane is at 79.5 yards. Mackenzie, Achane's actually been really good over the past couple of weeks for this Miami Dolphins team. Do we think that McDaniel wants to stick to the running game and kind of stick with what works and maybe not put too much on Tua, because you kind of want a safer game plan? Is that a way to say it? Like you kind of want to play it conservatively in a season that is just completely lost and everyone's going up against you, but you're coming off of some positive performances.
I don't think you have laurels to rest on if you're the Miami Dolphins. I think, yeah, every offensive coordinator would love if they could, walk their quarterback's hand and only do play action on a 2nd and 1, but they don't have that luxury. And if you look at the Commanders' defense, since week 7, I have their EPA stats, 2nd worst against the pass, about dead average, 15th against the run. So I do think they're more vulnerable through the air. And if you look at the Dolphins last season, they also started 2-6. They ended 8-9. They kind of have to win the rest of their games to save McDaniel's job. And if they do, I think they might.
Well, Tua's at 233.5 passing yards. From a Dolphins perspective, Chris, what prop angles are you looking at?
Yeah, it's tough. I think that Malik Washington's a guy that I might look at for the Dolphins. My only worry with the Dolphins betting them, I don't want to bet unders because the Washington defense is so bad, but then I look at the possibility of the Dolphins just running all over the Commanders here with Devon Achane. So I think for me, I'm not personally one to bet really high number overs, so I wouldn't really bet Achane over on his props, even though I think he could absolutely have a monstrous game here. What I would look at in terms of teams that allow a high percentage of targets to go to the slot area of the field, Washington is 2nd in slot fantasy points per game allowed to opposing wide receivers. And then they're also tied for 1st in terms of targets allowed to the slot. The Dolphins are actually right there as well. Malik Washington runs primarily routes out of the slot here. So I would look to him in terms of his ability after the catch to break a big play. I think 28.5 receiving yards is definitely something that is going to be in consideration for my final prop card for the week.
And it's actually a 26.5 on FanDuel, so you get a little discount here right now, currently on Malik Washington. And the Trench Report, looking at it for this week, it was kind of high on this matchup because the Commanders a little bit underrated. The Commanders are a team that in the trenches has played pretty well, especially against the pass, meaning pass protection. So we could see a situation where Mariota actually has time to throw, and it could be a decent game for the pass catchers here for the Washington Commanders. So, I think I like Ertz more so over anybody on the Commanders, just because I feel like he's got a good relationship with Mariota and a trustworthy guy here in a big spot. So if I had to pick one guy on the Commanders, it would be Zach Ertz to maybe go over receptions or go over his receiving yardage prop. Maybe even a fun little sprinkle on a Zach Ertz anytime touchdown, because we always love cashing those.
He ran more routes. He ran one more route than Debo, and Debo doesn't have much juice left in the tank. And if you're going to tell me Debo's at 4.5, Ertz at 3.5, and they're both juiced over, give me Ertz all day if I had to pick between the two for sure.
And plus 195 on the anytime touchdown right now for Zach Ertz up on FanDuel. Let's move to our next game, and it is in Atlanta. Revenge on the minds of the Falcons, Mackenzie. Atlanta hosting the Carolina Panthers. When we saw these two teams play earlier in the season in Carolina, it was an embarrassment. 30-0 Does the database, did you look up something here with divisional rivals, like the second game that you play against that team in the season? We know already that that's a positive trend. Like it's the second time you're playing a team in a season and you lost the first game, like that's always like a good bounce back spot. But if you got shut out in that first game, what does it tell us about how these teams do in the second game?
It doesn't really point to Falcons' strong play here. I just did. Wow. If you got blown out by a division rival by 20 points or more, it's slightly under ATS. So I narrowed it down a little bit further and did 30 points or more, as the Falcons did lose by 30-0. And it's 46% ATS. So it's even worse. And you have the Falcons in the very bad spot of traveling internationally and playing the next week without a bye.
Yep.
So, yeah, I think Carolina might be the side here.
Well, one of the things that's been a big trend, and shout out, I think it's Evan Abrams of the Action Network that does this every single year, the teams that come back from an international trip without the bye, almost all of them, I think all but one, are either tied or trailing in the fourth quarter of their subsequent games. So it could be an angle where maybe you play a first half on Carolina, and then you can see maybe Atlanta pulls away in the second half. But it's one of those things where in the fourth quarter of these games, these teams wind up being either tied or trailing. Right now up on FanDuel, the Falcons 3.5-point favorites over the Carolina Panthers. Chris, what have you noticed positively about Carolina besides Rico Dowdle? That's the first thing that's going to jump out. Everyone's seen how good Rico's looked. Right. But Bryce Young is actually, winning football games, and the Carolina Panthers are winning football games. Now, last week they lost, but Carolina 5-5 on the season, coming off of an ugly loss. I don't know. It kind of feels like a spot. I kind of want to back them.
Yeah, I wouldn't say that Bryce Young is winning football games. I say he's on a team that's winning football games because they're certainly not winning because of him. Rico Dowdle, I mean, you're right. He has really been the only bright spot. Look, at Tetairoa McMillan, his numbers aren't great, but he's looked really good in his opportunities. It's just this is a very low passing volume offense. I think when you look at, we look at, we're recording now during Thursday Night Football. We know the Jets, how run-heavy they are. Over the last 4 weeks, there are only two teams that have a negative 11% pass rate over expectation. One is the Jets. The other is the Carolina Panthers. Any chance that they get to run it 30 times per game, they're going to do. They didn't have that opportunity last week because the Saints snuck up on them and won that game and put them in a negative game script. And still Bryce Young went under his pass attempts in that game at 25.5. He's been 25 pass attempts or lower in 4 straight games, and that even includes a back and forth with the Cowboys where they won 30-27 in a high-scoring affair. So I think when you look at this, and you mentioned the post-international travel game, if that's going to work in the Panthers' favor, then I really like Bryce Young under passing attempts again. I just think that unless they get down by multiple touchdowns, and I think the little incentive motivation for the Panthers coming off, they're 5-4. That was an embarrassing loss for them against Tyler Shuck in his second NFL start. So I think that should give them a little more motivation as well, and that should mean that that's less chance of them falling into a hole like that. So that'd be the top angle that I'd look compared to both these teams here.
Up on FanDuel right now, Bryce Young, 28.5 pass attempts, minus 132 to the under. I like it. I think that's a good prop way to look at this game because we think Rico's going to have a big performance. In this week's Trench Report up on BetterDay.com, the number 2 biggest rushing mismatch of the week is the Carolina Panthers against the Atlanta Falcons, meaning Rico Dowdle and this offensive line should have success against the run-stop unit here of the Atlanta Falcons. So, and maybe you don't like to go over a big number here. Rico's at 88.5 rushing yards. That is a massive number for a rushing yardage prop. But Chris, I think you're onto something here. Maybe just going Bryce Young under the pass attempts is the way to place a bet while still backing Rico Dowdle. Because if we think he's going to have a successful game, they're going to give him the rock, and they're going to give it to Chuba Hubbard as well. They're just going to run the ball and maybe limit the exposure here for Bryce Young. Mackenzie, do you have a lean on the side or the total?
Like you, lean Panthers, the international travel, but it's not a strong play for me. I'm just listening to you guys. I love Bryce Young pass attempts under. One of his best QBR games, efficiency-wise, was against the Falcons when they won 30-0. 121 passing yards, 0 touchdowns, 0 interceptions. Like, that was the formula they figured out for their first win of the season. I think they would love to repeat that.
I like it. I think let's file that one away. Bryce Young under 28.5 passing attempts. Let's move on to our next game where we might have some weather impact. The Buccaneers are at the Bills. Talk about a team coming off of a disappointing loss. The Bucs are at the Bills right now up on FanDuel. Buffalo is the favorite. It is right now -5.5. Let's double check that. -5.5. Totals at 47.5. And the latest weather report that I'm seeing is potential for snow showers and winds, which we could see about 16 miles per hour winds here during this game. Now, Mac, we talk about it all the time. It's not the precipitation that affects the totals. It's the wind that affects the totals. Buffalo, no stranger to playing in cold, no stranger to playing in the snow. Tampa Bay, on the other hand, maybe, right. Could this be one of those games that we talk about, the body shock game, where the players from Florida are going up to Buffalo now, going to be in the snow and the cold and the wind, maybe a little bit of uncomfortableness, if that's a uncomfortability.
Uncomfortability.
They ain't comfortable,
right?
All right? They ain't comfortable, Mac.
The comfort is low. We've seen this before. The Miami Dolphins went up to Green Bay under 20 degrees and scored 0 points, and it was not a surprise if you looked at the numbers. 2 years ago, that's essentially what we saw. I wish it was cooler for that trend to apply.
It's not going to be that cold.
Be above 40, but generally, directionally, the worse the weather report gets, the better it is for the Bills. It couldn't be worse for the Florida teams. They really are like the whole trend of when you live in warm degree weather, you can practice with ice cubes in your pockets or whatever. You can't get your body accustomed to what the Bills are accustomed to naturally.
Yeah, so looking at the weather for Sunday there in Orchard Park, rain and snow showers and winds of 15 to 25 miles per hour. And it does say, at least on the Weather Channel website, higher wind gusts possible. So you see that weather report, Chris. Where does your mind go with the prop angles?
Well, we're not seeing a lot of receiving props now because Kincaid is missing practice. He's week to week. I do not expect him to play. And also Godwin is back at practice this week. So is Bucky Irving. So there's a lot of TBDs right now. I think Bucky is closer to a 50-50. I think actually they're both around 50-50 to play this week. Maybe they hold out them for one more week. But it's a little bit tough for me. I don't know. Like, I don't want to make any weather bets right now because this game seems kind of on the fringes to where it's like, if it's like 12, 13 mile per hour winds, like I don't really think that affects anything. Usually you need like sustained above 15 in order for it to actually matter, in my opinion. So I don't know if I want to go there just yet. I'm hoping for a back and forth, like we have a high total here. And I think when you look at like potential weather impact, Vegas still has this game up at 48 points almost. So I think that like I trust that to stay more in terms of what, the explosiveness of these two offenses here. So I would like to look at, Khalil Shakir, for example. I think could have some value here in his receptions over. Possibly Dawson Knox, who's going to be the direct fill-in for Dalton Kincaid. I'm just not seeing those props up just yet, but those are two areas I would definitely like to look. And then on the contrary, depending on what happens with Bucky, I think Sean Tucker, he's formed a 50-50 split with Rachaad White. The Bills are vulnerable to strong rushing games, and White has just been one of the most inefficient rushers in the league, dating back to last year even. So I think if the Bucs can establish anything on the ground early, it'll be through Tucker. And I think a longest rush over prop, if Bucky does not play, I think I would definitely look there for Sean Tucker here in this matchup.
And remember, Sean Tucker did play college football at Syracuse. Yes, it was indoors in the Carrier Dome, but used to walking around campus in that cold weather, and I'm sure probably has a lot of fans in upstate New York that might make the trek to go watch him there. So maybe it's a Sean Tucker game there for the Bucs, but obviously monitor the weather as we get closer and closer to kickoff on Sunday. We'll get a clearer picture of whether it's just going to be precipitation, snow showers, or if the wind is absolutely going to have an impact. The wind is the most important factor, as Chris reiterated. The wind is the most important factor They don't call them snovers for no reason, Mackenzie. Like, games do go over, but monitor the wind for that game.
I just want to say one thing with that, Scott, because you bring up a good point, is like, with the weather, I get these questions all the time in fantasy. And it's like, oh, would you not play X player because it's going to rain? And I'm like, teams still do score points in the rain. Teams still do score points in the snow. So I would just trust what the books are hanging for the over-under and try to stick to that as my guide. And it's like, you really might not know. Saturday night, it could be like 25-mile-per-hour projected winds, and all of a sudden we get to kickoff, and it completely goes away. So just tread carefully with that type of betting, in my opinion.
Yeah, and also, like, these games tend to go over because, as we often see, the offensive players know where they're going, right? Yeah. It's the defense that has to react and could sometimes slip on the field when you're trying to chase down a wide receiver that knows that he's running 5 yards and then doing a slant to the inside. So that's you do wind up getting some open guys here in the poor footing. But, again, wind is what affects the totals more so than anything.
At 1-800-Flowers.com, we know that connections are at the heart of being human. Whether celebrating life's joys or comforting during tough times, 1-800-Flowers helps you express what words can't. For nearly 50 years, millions have trusted 1-800-Flowers to deliver thoughtful gifts that help create lasting bonds. Because it's more than just a gift. It's your way of showing you care. Visit 1-800-Flowers.com/WWO and connect today. That's 1-800-Flowers.com/WWO.
This episode brought to you by Progressive Insurance. Do you ever find yourself playing the budgeting game? Shifting a little money here, a little there, and hoping it all works out? Well, with the Name Your Price tool from Progressive, you can get a better budgeter and potentially lower your insurance bill too. You tell Progressive what you want to pay for car insurance, and they'll help find you options within your budget. Try it today at Progressive.com. Progressive Casualty Insurance Company and Affiliates. Price and coverage match limited by state law. Not available in all states.
Let's move on to a game that's not going to be affected by weather here. Texans are at the Titans. And right now up on FanDuel, we have Houston, a 5.5-point road favorite, low total of 37.5 because, well, it's Davis Mills at quarterback once again here for the Houston Texans. So Cam Ward against Davis Mills. Mackenzie, I was looking something up before. I think the way to play this game is Texans second half. So right now up on FanDuel, you can get Texans minus 2.5 for the second half. I think once Houston gets a lead in this game and forces the Titans to play from behind, making them one-dimensional, this Texans pass rush and DeMeco Ryans is going to find creative ways to pin their ears back and make things very uncomfortable for Cam Ward. And then you just throw in the other fact here that the Titans are one of the lowest, I think they're the second lowest second half scoring team in the entire NFL, just over 6 points per second half. It's under 6 points at home this season in the second half. I could see a situation where maybe Tennessee keeps it close early, but this is a Texans team that runs away with it in the second half.
Yeah, Davis Mills on the season, 56 QBR, which is good, a little bit above, maybe this year it's average because it's been a pretty efficient year for quarterbacking. PFF, not so much, 47. He's been deemed to have been bad, but they're able to, with their weapons, been able to patch things together. However, there is no redeeming stat for Cam Ward. He is the last in everything. If you look at his QBR, the distance between him and Dylan Gabriel is like the distance between the best quarterback and an average quarterback. It's just a massive gulf. And if you look at his game by games, the worst games have come against decent defenses. The Broncos week 1 are probably the second best or the only other top 3 defense they're going to play besides this Texans team. So I would look at unders. I don't see either offense doing great, but I think Davis Mills is a backup. He's not a bad backup. He's not maybe the best backup, but he's an above average backup. I don't think the line move here from 7.5 to 6 really makes sense because I thought it was going to be Davis Mills the whole time.
Yeah, I just want to fade Cam Ward and the Titans at every time, at every chance I can get. Chris, when you look at the props for this game, are you more inclined to play Texans stuff? Are you more inclined to play Titans stuff? Where would you fall here in this low total game?
Yeah, it's crazy how low the total is. I mean, even with the Titans coming off the bye, you figure they'd figure something out here. Calvin Ridley is back at practice. I think that's going to try to just like really muddle up things with Chika Conko at tight end. They also have the rookie Gunnar Helm at tight end. They're going to have Chimere Dike, the rookie wide receiver, another rookie wide receiver, and Alec Iomanner. So that's like 5 targets right there. Then you add in the fact that Spears and Pollard were essentially splitting snaps 50-50. So now we're talking about like 7 different guys that could get targets from Cam Ward. So I could really only look unders here. I do agree with your point on the Texans defense. Like, what can we trust out of anything in this game is that the Texans defense is really good and the Titans defense is really bad. And I think with like you looking at last week, Woody Marks outsnapped Nick Chubb 60-10. And I know they were trailing for part of that game, but he started the game and he got almost, I think all the goal line touches are actually inside the 10, inside the 20 touches as well. And this week to the media, D'Amico Ryans has been extra vocal about like, hey, these rookies, we're not calling them rookies anymore. Woody Marks, Jaden Higgins, Jalen Noel. Like, the Texans are better if these guys are playing over guys like Nick Chubb, Christian Kirk, Xavier Hutchinson. So, like, I think that we could see a little bit of a breakout for any of those 3 players for the Texans, because it's like, what better opportunity do you have than playing against a defense that's as bad as the Titans are? So those are the different areas I think I would look for sure. Definitely would look under Tony Pollard and his rushing yards. We already saw Spears start to overtake him there. And then when you look at the fantasy adjusted points allowed, the Texans are top 10 in fantasy adjusted points allowed to opposing running backs. They're pretty stingy on the ground there, especially between the tackles. So I think Woody Marks, for me, over 61.5 rushing yards. I would look there, and I would also look to his over 13.5 longest rush prop, because he might not be the most explosive or efficient rusher on the ground. He was more of a receiving back coming out of college. He is athletic, and he's got some juice, and against this defense, I can see him breaking off at least 1 or 2 long runs here.
I like it. I like it a lot, actually, especially based on the comments there from D'Amico Ryans. Let's move on to an NFC North battle. The Chicago Bears at the Minnesota Vikings, and currently up on FanDuel, the Vikings a 2.5-point favorite, total of 47.5. And I've said this like all week, Mackenzie. If you can get the 3, I like the Chicago Bears. I also like the Bears just in a teaser from 2.5 up to 8.5. Chicago, and this might surprise you, Chris, Chicago in my trench report ranks as the number 4 pass blocking offensive line and the number 3 run blocking offensive line. Yeah. The Bears offensive line, which was much maligned and everyone talked about, it's going to take a while for, these new pieces to kind of integrate and come together. They have come together very nicely. So I think this is a matchup here where the Bears actually have success moving the football against the Brian Flores defense, or at least if they don't, Caleb Williams doesn't get eaten up and Swift and Monangai don't get tackled in the backfield. So I think that Chicago keeps this close. I would love to get a +3 or just tease the Bears up. What do you think, Mackenzie?
I kind of like the over here because I agree with you that the Bears offense is underrated. You just read the trench report stats, and I have this week 7 filter. Since then, they have the 2nd best rushing attack in the league and a top 8 offense in the league. So Ben Johnson's done his thing. However, their defense and their record, I think, is skewing how good we think this team is. Or rather, their record is skewing how bad their defense actually is.
Yeah.
Bottom 3 by non-turnover EPA, but there's 6 wins because every fourth quarter has gone their way. The pregame.com fourth quarter win share measures the delta from how you should have landed in the fourth quarter. If you just last couple minutes, closed your eyes, what do you think the score would have been? What do you think the result would have been? They should be a 4-4 team, and they're a 4-6 team, and they're a 6-4 team, which completely flips 180 what we think of this team. I don't think they're very good, and I think the Vikings, even though I'm not a huge believer in McCarthy, I am a big believer in O'Connell. I think we see points here.
I don't hate it. I don't hate it at all. This was the number 1 closest matchup in the trench report this week. So usually that's a good sign to take points with an underdog. What do you have as props in this game, Chris?
Yeah, I think that we're going to see a lot of chaotic quarterback play between these two teams. The way that Caleb has kind of panicked when under pressure this year. And I do agree the offensive line play, it's been very good in Chicago this year. And we've seen DeAndre Swift play above his head in terms of efficiency. Caleb Williams obviously has good weapons and a better play caller than last year. And McCarthy's really struggled so far in his limited action. So I think we're looking at the fact that McCarthy has a great matchup on paper. He's at home in a dome. I expect both these I expect the Vikings offense to play well. The Bears offense scares me a little bit. Caleb's just that type of guy. He seems so erratic to where 303 touchdowns, sure. Can he also go for like 150 yards and 3 interceptions? I feel like sure too, especially with how Brian Flores likes to scheme up his blitzes against an inexperienced play caller here. So I think we're going to see a lot of big plays in this game. I would maybe even look to interceptions on both quarterbacks. If you played both of them, you'd get close to around even money because Caleb's like plus 130, McCarthy's around minus 140, 150. So that would be an angle I definitely would look at there. And I think like we're definitely due for some positive regression for Jordan Addison, Justin Jefferson here, where I definitely want to look to play them in DFS. I think you look at the fact last week that Jordan Addison got a dozen targets, 12 targets, and like didn't really do much in the box score yardage wise. I think 48.5 is like kind of like that low hanging fruit, explosive player in a fast track in the dome against a really bad defense. Like that's the type of player I want to bet on. So I definitely want to look strongly at playing possibly Addison either over receiving yards or maybe even also over longest reception.
Now, Mackenzie, this was our first anti-correlated parlay of the NFL season. If you remember, going all the way back to week number 1, we looked at football. We looked at the history of Ben Johnson's offenses. We looked at the history of how Brian Flores' defenses have handled the Ben Johnson offenses. We looked at the history of how Brian Flores has handled Caleb Williams in particular. And this led us to our incredible cash in week number 1 of the anti-correlated same-game parlay of Caleb Williams over completions, but under yardage. Right. And that was something that we got that home because it's a lot of short passes, it's a lot of dink and dunk, and that was an easy cash for us. Now we look at the props for this game. His completions is at 20.5, his yardage 224.5. If he has the exact same box score that he had in week number 1, a 27-24 loss to the Vikings, 21 of 35 for 210 yards and a touchdown, we will cash this once again. I know it's indoors. Mac, I think I'm going back to the well. Over completions, under yardage.
I couldn't blame you. Our handicap involved, yes, Ben Johnson versus the Vikings, but it was also let's get this guy out of trouble. Let's not have him make a mistake, and that's kind of what they've been all season. You look at how they do on the first drive of the game versus the rest of the game. When it's scripted and they can avoid, him having to go back and play hero ball at all, they're going to do better. I will say the run game being so much better than it was earlier in the year, maybe they kind of supplement that and they don't need to have so many short completions. But the general handicap makes sense. Nothing's changed that much since week 1.
Yeah, and the thing is, Brian Flores just doesn't blitz. He doesn't blitz Caleb Williams. It's the lowest blitz rate against any quarterback that he plays against because he just says, listen, we'll let you just dink and dunk. You're not going to beat us deep. We're going to play our coverage, and you can't beat our coverage. Like, you're not smart enough or you're not good enough to beat our coverage, and that's how he has played Caleb Williams in his short career in the NFL. So I think we go back to the well here. We go back to the well with over completions and under passing yards. Chris, can I get you to hop on board with us?
How many career games is that? 2 or 3? 3?
It's the 2 last year and the 1 this year.
The 1 this year. Okay.
Yep.
I didn't know that Flores did that against Caleb Williams. That's news to me. I do agree mostly if you trust your defense and coverage, you're better off dropping guys back. And I think the more time Caleb has in the pocket, the worse he is because he's going to hold on to the ball too long. And, I give Caleb credit. Like, he looks like one of the fastest quarterbacks in the NFL. Like, when he does get out and scramble, I think he needs to be a little more decisive doing it. But when he does it, he looks really electric. So I think that could be another reason to sit back and not send blitzes like that. So, yeah, it's tough, man, because like the thing is with how bad the Bears defense is, if McCarthy can just put one good game together here, then it's like I think the Bears could be potentially forced into some big time passing volume. So it would hesitate me to play anything under passing wise for the Bears, but I definitely agree with like the logic there for sure. I certainly wouldn't go against you guys there.
All right, let's ride it. Let's cash it again, Mackenzie. It worked out for us in week number 1. We're going to do it again here in week number 11. 10 weeks later, we're going back to the well with our probably the best handicap we've ever had on this show. All right, let's.
And of course, it's a super long shot because they're very anti-correlated, but you get paid for that.
Exactly.
You get paid for that.
All right, let's move on to maybe my favorite prop of the week. All right, the New York Giants hosting the Green Bay Packers. Favorite prop of the week. Right now up on FanDuel, we're just going to look at the line of the game is Packers -7, totals 42.5. My favorite prop of the week, Chris, is Jameis Winston to go over 228.5 passing yards. First off, I want the Giants to win so badly just because I need a Jameis Winston post-game press conference. Yes. I need him to grab the microphone and talk about how they were eating W's and everything's great, everything's beautiful. Playing football on a football field with football players is just a beautiful moment. You know, we love football. I need Jameis Winston press conferences in my life. But specifically in this game, I do expect the Packers to put it on the Giants, and I think that Mike Kafka named Jameis Winston the starting quarterback for a reason. Not because Mike Kafka is going to call a bunch of handoffs to Tyrone Tracy. It's because he's going to open up this offense. He's going to show what he can do as a play caller, and I think we're going to see a big, big performance here from Winston. Not only do I love his over 228.5 as my favorite player prop of the week, but I'm going to do a little sprinkle, and I'm going to ladder J-Mo. I'm going to go over 250. I'm going to go over 275. I'm going to go over 300 for Jameis Winston in this game against the Green Bay Packers.
Wow, I love it. I was like hoping you weren't going to say Jameis Winston INT because then we just could never be friends again. So Jameis Winston, he's one of my favorite all-time players, man. My dad used to cover the Bucs as a sports columnist back when they drafted Jameis and he was the franchise quarterback there for a while. Just love the guy, man. Just vibes all around. I mean, Jameis Winston plus 700 to score a rushing touchdown or receiving touchdown, anytime touchdown. I mean,
oh wow.
Why not, man? Like he did it last year in that snow game against the Steelers, I think, Ravens, I think it was. Jameis Winston under 0.5 interceptions, like plus 166. Like I'm all about just betting that for the Winston vibes, man, for sure. So I think with the Packers, like I mean, look at the Packers, like overtime against the Cowboys, like over the last few months, like lost at the Browns, barely won at Arizona. Lost at home to the Panthers, lost to the Packers by 3. They're not like that's an extremely conservative offense right now, and especially after they lost Tucker Kraft for season-ending injury. So I think like this is like the Giants, fresh start for them. Like don't put in Russ. The crowd's booing him. We all know how bad Russ is. I think the players are going to rally around Winston, rally around the new coach. And Dart will be there cheering him on the sideline. So I'm all about it, man. I think the Giants are in a prime spot to actually pull an upset here. I actually don't think the Packers are going to just walk all over at the Giants. So I love the Winston. Like anything Winston having success, I'm all for it this week.
Jameis Winston, 300 plus passing yards plus 536. I mean, come on.
Can you go over 530 passing yards?
Yeah, he's throwing. You know what I'm going to bet also? Not only am I going to do the alternates on Jameis Winston, but you can find, depending on the sports book, they have the weekly leaders. And I'm going to bet Jameis Winston to be the weekly leader in passing yards.
Yeah, I mean, the matchup is very tough on paper, but I love it because we saw it last year in his first start for Cleveland against, I think it was the Ravens, and he completely tore them up, and the Browns wound up winning that game in an upset outright. So, I think he's kind of it's almost like matchups don't matter for Winston.
Yeah, Mackenzie, you had an interesting stat on with Kafka taking over as the OC. I mean, not as the OC taking over as the interim head coach. What happens in that first game?
It leads to a lot of happiness for your Jameis Winston bets and for fans everywhere. Because what do New York Giants fans want to see? Do they want to see their team improve by 2% from last week because they made all these strategic decisions? No. Their season hasn't gone the way they wanted to. They had to fire their coach. And historically, I have the data since 2000, the guy that comes in, especially if he's an offensive guy, doesn't really lead to more success. It's actually slightly under 50% ATS. So that whole dead cat bounce with the fired coach is somewhat of a myth. I mean, recently it's been a little better, but it's somewhat of a myth overall. But on offense, it's all to the good. They score more and they allow more points, and it goes over. So 20 times an offensive coordinator or an offensive assistant has taken over as the head coach job. 15 times it's gone over, so 15-5 by almost a touchdown per game, 5.5 points per game. We saw earlier this year, Mike McCoy comes to the Titans. They scored their first 2 possessions. Everybody's excited. All right, they lose 31-13 to the Patriots, but we don't care. The game goes over. I will say the weather, again, the wind is what matters. 18 miles per hour to 15 to 18 miles per hour is predicted for Sunday in New Jersey. So that's a concern if you're betting the over like me, and I am. It's one of my favorite. It is my favorite pick of the week as far as the side or total is concerned. I'm going to wait and see if I can get a 42 or a 41.5. Jameis Winston, by the way, also 60% overs since he left the Tampa Bay Buccaneers. So generally in the latter half of his career, I'm not sure about the no interceptions prop. He's thrown a pick in 6 of his last 8 starts. But yardage, touchdowns, we're going to have some fun.
If you threw in like a same game parlay and it was like Winston anytime touchdown, then the passing yards, and then throw in interception, I wonder what that is, because I feel like that could be a fun little way to do it.
W's. Eating the W's. Eating my W right here.
Eating them crab legs.
We love
and
Jameis.
W's, man.
We love it.
One thing I want to throw in on Jameis in terms of his passing core is Slayton has missed back-to-back practices. Now, I see Slayton's lines up now. I think Slayton is more likely to miss this game because I believe it's a hamstring injury. So if Slayton misses, I think Wan'Dale Robinson over receiving yards I'd be interested in, because it's at 57.5. We're talking about a pass-happy Jameis Winston, his number one receiver, cut and clear. And 57.5 seems pretty low for that. So I think, and Wan'Dale is usually known as like the slot receiver, but this year he has a career high in his average depth of target. He's had some big receiving yardage number games. So I think that's a way you can pair it with like Winston having passing success. I think a lot of it will end up going to Wan'Dale Robinson at the end of the day.
Hammer.
Unwavering faith, boys. That's what we're entering this game with. Unwavering faith.
Here we go. Bengals are at the Steelers. Pittsburgh is a 5.5 point favorite. And this is a revenge spot, Mackenzie. We've talked about this before with the Steelers losing to the Cincinnati Bengals earlier this season. This is also the number one biggest rushing mismatch in the Trench Report. So Jaylen Warren should have a good game here. This is the number one biggest overall mismatch in the Trench Report this week, with the Steelers pass rush also going up against this Cincinnati Bengals team. I know everyone's happy that like Joe Burrow's practice window opened up, but this feels like if there was ever a spot to back the Steelers, this is the spot to back the Steelers, Mackenzie.
Yeah, it's a pretty basic trend, and it makes sense if you're a favorite in your previous matchup and you lose to a division opponent, and now you're favored again. You're 55% ATS, and it would make sense that the Steelers would have this circled on the calendar. However, I think the Bengals get some points because, and I'm glad we were able to talk about this game next, because a point that just occurred to me while we were talking about Jameis Winston is his numbers are okay with the Browns, but they might be a lot better with the Giants, because Joe Flacco's numbers were okay with the Browns, but on a different team with more opportunities with not the Browns offense, he's been able to do a lot better. He's been a top half of the league quarterback since he's gone to Cincinnati, and they've put up a lot of points. 40 points versus the Jets allowed and scored, 40 points versus the Bears allowed and scored. So I think we see Aaron Rodgers bounce back from one of the worst games of his career last week.
Where would you be looking, Chris, for this game? Is it as simple as Jaylen Warren overs?
Maybe. I mean, stick with Flacco for a second. Since joining Cincinnati in 3 starts, he's the number 1 overall fantasy quarterback in fantasy points per game with no rushing to speak for at all. 9 touchdowns, 2 interceptions, 47 pass attempts, 34 and 47. So I think that normally I don't go for these overs on these large numbers, but I have to look a little bit further in to Flacco over 39.5 pass attempts in this game, especially the fact that the Steelers, I mean, they've just been god-awful defending the pass. The one thing they've done okay is defending the run, but when you look at the fantasy-adjusted points allowed, they're second to last defending receivers, and then they're bottom 5 in defending tight ends. We saw the last time these two teams played, Jamar Chase get 20-plus targets and completely eaten this game, and they could try to scheme some stuff away to take Chase out, but then you got T. Higgins doing the same thing on the other side. You can't take both those guys away simultaneously. So I think that those guys, at least both of them, or if not both of them, at least one of them will have another big game here. I think Joe Flacco passing yards, 260.5. That seems pretty low to me as well because I expect the Steelers to have a lot of success on the other side. They're going to push the Bengals into scoring. If the Steelers can't score in the Bengals defense at home, then they got a lot bigger troubles on their hands. So I this game is totaled near 50 for a reason. And the one thing I do know is that Flacco's going to throw the ball a ton because their defense is so bad. He's going to need to throw the ball a ton here. So I think for me, one interesting angle with the Steelers is that teams against the Bengals are actually throwing to their wide receiver ones at a very low rate because the one good defensive player they had is defensive back DJ Turner. He's been one of the top cover corners in the league. Back when the Bears put almost 50 points on them a couple weeks ago, Rome Odunze had 0 yards and 0 catches in that game because they just were not throwing his way. And I've seen that a lot. As a lifelong Bengals fan here, I've seen that a lot this season. So I think DK Metcalf, I'm not going to bet his under, but I will look at the secondary receiver, a guy like Calvin Austin, 32.5. He did not play the last time these two teams played. He's a quick kind of yards after the catchy type of guy. I think over 32.5 yards for Calvin Austin is another way that I'd look here. And you know they're going to feed the tight ends. I mean, Pat Freiermuth, Jonnu Smith, Darnell Washington, I think those are all candidates for overs. In a game where I like so many overs, it's going to take me a lot of time to really sift through and figure out, out of these dozen I like which 3 or 4 do I really want to bet on at the end of the day. But I think this game is absolutely ripe for betting overs.
Yeah, and the tight end I would look at, because he's going to have lower numbers, but in the red zone, he should get targeted here, is Darnell Washington. I talked to Ray Fittipaldo, who covers the Steelers for the Pittsburgh Post-Gazette, I believe, Chris, you are familiar with. Yep. And I talked to him last week, and he said that Rodgers went on record and said, our offense is better when Darnell's in the game. And the Steelers are running these multiple tight end sets, and whether that means just because Darnold's such a massive big body that he's a great blocker and Rodgers is happy to have basically an extra offensive lineman in the game, or it's because Rodgers thinks that he's a big target in the red zone and he makes their offense better just having him out there on the field because he can block, he can release, and he's a mismatch problem. So he's the guy that I would be looking at for your anytime touchdown props or some receptions props, especially in the red zone. I'd look at Darnell Washington for out of the 3-headed tight end monster for the Pittsburgh Steelers.
All 3 of those tight ends went over their reception props in the last time these two teams played. When you look at the routes data, Jonnu Smith, 28 routes, Freiermuth, 25, Darnell, 16. They combined for 17 targets and 11 receptions. And I'm seeing Freiermuth listed at 2.5. And I mentioned the Steelers being bad at covering tight ends. The Bengals are dead last, and it's not even close. So definitely would look at those players.
Fire it up. Let's move on to our next game here. It is the Chargers at the Jaguars. The Jags are a home dog here to the Chargers, and the Trench Report does not agree. Up on FanDuel right now, the Chargers are a 3-point road favorite, but as far as the Trench Report is concerned, this is the number 2 biggest mismatch of the week, and it is because of the banged-up nature of the Chargers' offensive line and how they will protect Justin Herbert in this spot. Meanwhile, Trevor Lawrence should get some pretty good protection from what is, even though Khalil Mack had the big play last week, it still is not an elite pass rush unit here Mackenzie, what was your first inclination here between the Chargers and the Jaguars?
On paper, it seems a lot like a quarterback versus who's the better quarterback versus who's the better team situation, because the Chargers have the better quarterback by miles. If they were somewhat in the vicinity of each other before the season, Herbert's improved to being a top 8 quarterback so far this year statistically, while Trevor Lawrence has fallen off. He's in Bryce Young land, Michael Penix land, towards the bottom of our rankings here. However, I'm not sure the Jaguars are good outside of Trevor Lawrence, which makes their record really perplexing. Like offensively, defensively, they're kind of meh. They're 4th in rush EPA, so I guess that makes up for a lot, but I think that gets found out. I don't think Harbaugh allows a one-dimensional team to beat them. So I kind of lean towards the Chargers on the side, but I'm not betting against the Trench Report. It's been 3-2 almost every week.
Well, you take a look at the skill position players here for the Jags, and they've been banged up at wide receiver. Chris Parker Washington was the guy that kind of stepped up last week. He had the 2 touchdowns. One of them was a punt return, but the other one he did catch a touchdown. Do we go back to the well with Parker Washington? Where could we go here in this game?
Yeah, I think I had his receptions over last week and it lost because they got us to such a big lead. They didn't really need to start throwing until like the last drive of the game when the Texans finally came back and got the lead. In this situation with the Chargers obviously coming in and they're road favorites here, I think the Jacksonville Jaguars are going to need to throw. My biggest hesitation, the reason why we're not seeing a lot of receiving lines, is because Brian Thomas is back at practice. Brenton Strange is expected to come off IR, the tight end there. So there's like multiple injury TBDs we don't know about right now. I think that on the other side of things, what we do know is the Jaguars are one of the worst passing defense in the league. And I think despite the Joel injury, Chargers coming in here on the road, I think Herbert's going to have a field day throwing against this secondary. Quentin Johnston, 41.5. He led the team in targets last week in their win against the Steelers. And what we've seen really is like at the beginning of the season, it was a 3-way battle in terms of target competition between Ladd McConkey, Quentin Johnson, and Keenan Allen. Keenan Allen is almost completely fallen out of the rotation at this point. His routes are like he's running at like a 25% route rate. So most of the plays, he's not even on the field for the last month. And if it's just going to be Ladd, QJ, and Gadsden, the 3 guys who have the most athleticism, explosiveness, then I think you're looking at a 20-yard difference between Ladd and QJ in a good matchup. Like, I'll definitely take the low-hanging fruit there with QJ. Gadsden is back at practice, by the way. He's limited. He's considered day-to-day. I expect Gadsden to play. So I think those 3 guys are going to get the majority of the production here, and I think it's a great matchup on paper. We saw what Davis Mills was able to do against Jaguars last week. Nico Collins and Dalton Schultz absolute 8, and I expect Ladd McConkey, QJ, and Gadsden to eat again this week.
This episode is brought to you by Progressive Insurance. You chose to hit play on this podcast today. Smart choice. Progressive loves to help people make smart choices. That's why they offer a tool called Auto Quote Explorer that allows you to compare your Progressive car insurance quote with rates from other companies. So you save time on the research and can enjoy savings when you choose the best rate for you. Give it a try after this episode at Progressive.com. Progressive Casualty Insurance Company and Affiliates. Not available in all states or situations. Prices vary based on how you buy.
The Seahawks are at the Rams. Very, very good matchup here. Very big matchup, Mackenzie, in terms of the NFC West standings, with both teams at 7-2 on the season. Right now, it is the Rams as the favorite at home, and rightfully so. Rams are 3-point favorites over the Seahawks up on FanDuel. But we've mentioned this multiple times now this season, Mac. It is McDonald on the road. How elite the Seahawks have been away from Seattle with him as the head coach. Does that continue here going down to LA to take on the Rams?
I think so, because another thing that will continue for Chargers and Rams teams is that SoFi is not a great home field advantage. There's no data that suggests it's not the worst home field advantage in the league since it opened. By the way, San Diego wasn't great either. It's just not a Steelers, Pittsburgh, Ohio-like fandom for those teams, and they don't get the support. You add in the fact that the Seahawks are great road teams. I tend to like the Seahawks here, especially because I leaned that way when it was 2.5. I don't see how it's now inching towards 3.5, or at least 3.2, where you can get a cheap 3 on the Seahawks. I don't think these are anything but even teams, and I think it's a 2-point home field advantage generously for the Rams. And it's probably not just an even matchup, but like you said, a great matchup. These might be the two best teams in football since week 7. Rams, #1 offense by EPA. Seahawks, #1 defense by EPA, and both are top 5 in either category. So this is going to be a heavyweight juggernaut matchup right here.
Well, looking at that defense has me kind of thinking about going with some unders on the Rams players, Chris.
Yeah, I was going to ask you guys, like, do you have a strong feeling in terms of the total being under for this game? Because I feel like that's a little bit
I think it's an under game.
there.
Yep.
Yeah.
It's so high, 48.5. I feel like that's the total if either of these teams are playing bad teams and they're going to run it up a little bit and put it away early in the third quarter. This is going to be nip and tuck. I think this is 24-20.
Yeah. These coaches, they want this game, big-time division game. These are 2 Super Bowl contenders right now. And the thing is, both have really good defenses here. So I think you maybe see a little conservatism here. But yeah, it's a tough one. This is one of those games. It's like these kind of star-studded flagship household team name games where like I tend to usually kind of shy away from. I could see 24-20, absolutely. I think I could definitely see that a lot more than 30-27.
Yes.
I think the way I would maybe look to attack this is like the Seahawks have, as of last week, they were using 3 running backs. And the Rams at home are one of the top rush defenses in the league. So maybe look at the Seattle running back unders, even though the numbers are pretty low already. That might be an angle I might look at. I think Blake Corum, I know he's been getting a decent amount of touches, but it's usually only when the Rams are blowing teams out. They split it 50-50. When games are close, it's usually all Kyren. And I don't think that McVay has made that switch yet. So if you're going to tell me this game's going to be decided by 3 points or around that number, I think Corum might not get that many touches at the end of the day. So I might also be willing to look at his rushing under as a backup. 30.5 is pretty high.
I'm going to go with Matthew Stafford under a half a rushing yard. That's the prop I'm going to go with in this spot because Matthew Stafford doesn't run the ball. And when he does, it's a kneel down. I think that there's going to be a situation in this game where it could come down to a final field goal at the end of the game because this is a field goal spread between 2 of the first place teams in the division and 2 of the top teams in the NFC. And I think that we could see a situation where at the end of the game, Stafford's going to take a knee to center the football and line up for a field goal and finish the game with -2 yards, which is something that he has done multiple times this season. Stafford's
Can we bet that? Can we bet the exacta?
Well,
Stafford -1 plus 500?
Stafford's game logs this season: -2, -6, -4, -3, 1-1-0-0-4. He had 1 game against Indy, 4 carries for 4 yards. So give me under a half a rushing yard for Matthew Stafford. Let's get some kneel downs. That's how I like it. All right, let's move on to our next game here on the schedule. There's a couple of games left here for this mega pod, a Better Day / Betting Predators collab here. Let's move on to the 49ers at the Cardinals. Mackenzie, the 49ers, 3-point road favorites against Arizona. With the positive injury news, could be Brock Purdy back. Everyone's happy about that. But I found something interesting looking up some data on this game, and I would like for you to explain it to me, please. Cousin Kyle is 6-11 ATS all-time against the Arizona Cardinals. Why? Why does this team have his number, Mackenzie? Why?
I mean, that's like 3 different coaching staffs over the 8 years he's been there now. I think that's just a number. That's just a number.
Okay.
I would like to see the splits here. I know a lot of times that we've been like, at being the 49ers, been like 7-10-point favorites on the road when there was really the doldrums of Arizona, and we didn't always cover those games. But yeah, I'm surprised to hear that number. You hear that, you heard that forever with the Seahawks and Pete Carroll, and then the 49ers won 4 straight ATS. They fired Pete Carroll, and you don't hear that so more. I like the 49ers here. I think Purdy coming back is worth 2 points to the line, and I understand the counter argument that, look, he came back in the Jaguars. He wasn't ready. When he can't run, and his big differentiator as a player is his scampability, if that's a word. And if he doesn't have that, he's not Tom Brady in the pocket. I think we have good reason to believe that green dot next to his name on ESPN.com is real because he's been at practice for 4 weeks. considered like eligible to play, like on the border for 4 weeks. They took their time, they took their lumps because they thought they made a mistake bringing him back when they did. But I think he's as ready as he would be week 1 of next season, essentially. Maybe 10% worse.
Yes, I agree as well. So, by the way, it's only 3 times the Niners have been under Kyle Shanahan a field goal or less favored over over Arizona. 0-3 ATS.
Yeah. Oh, okay. All right.
Yeah.
I'm surprised.
Yep.
Give Gannon his props.
2 games in 2018, 1 game earlier this season. Chris, what do you like prop-wise in this matchup?
I mean, I think for starters, I like Brissett over the passing yards. I expect San Francisco's offense to do well here to push Arizona. In his 4 games, he's had no less than 258 passing yards in a single game out of 4 appearances so far this year. 3 of those have been on the road. The one time he was at home against a very good Packers secondary, he put up 279 yards. He's throwing the ball well, and I don't think that missing Marvin Harrison with the appendectomy is really going to matter much because McBride is still the go-to target. So I think McBride's going to have a monster game here if he stays healthy. The only reason to go under, really. Again, these are high numbers. I really don't like to attack overs on high numbers like this, but I think a guy like Michael Wilson is maybe like Greg Dortch. When you look at the opposing slot points per game allowed, Greg Dortch has really not played at all this year, but with no Marvin Harrison, he might run a decent amount of routes out of the slot here. So over 3.5 catches at plus money could be an area to look at as well. Those are some things I would maybe like to look at here. The one thing I'm interested to see, I know Shanahan can be very misleading with the injury updates, as we all know here. Sorry, I don't mean to disrespect your cousin over there, Mackenzie, but Ricky...
No, it's a long legacy of the Irish to be tricky.
As a longtime fantasy player, I do not like Kyle Shanahan at all. So because of that, with the fantasy community's got a beef with Kyle Shanahan for the injury reporting, right? But Ricky Pearsall, who's like, I've been needing him back in my lineup for over a month now. And he was kind of in that same situation where it's like, what's going on? Like, they don't put him on IR, but he misses far more than 4 weeks. So what's happening here? According to Shanahan, I believe said today, is that like he's going to be a full go. So maybe they were just waiting for him to get 100% right. I know those PCL injuries can get very tricky. But like if he's a full go, 44.5 yards, like he, in the 2 of his 3 games played this year, he had over 100 receiving yards. And he's their clear, like, downfield threat. Like Kittle's going to eat in the short intermediate areas. McCaffrey gets the dump offs. Jennings is more of like that possession, X receiver, like possession, move the chain type stuff. Pearsall's the only one who could really take the top off here. And Purdy in his first game back, like I think he's going to go back to Pearsall, long reception over receiving yards. Like if Pearsall is fully healthy, we could maybe be seeing this line in the future, like in the 60s. And because I do believe in his talent in that sense. So I think that might be a low-hanging fruit to pick in a game with a total of almost 50 here.
Let's move on. The Browns host the Baltimore Ravens up on FanDuel right now. Ravens 7.5-point favorites. This line has gone down because Lamar Jackson a little bit banged up. So I would assume that it'll go back up. If there's good news on Lamar Jackson, it'll certainly go down a little bit. If Lamar is, not a little bit, it'll go down a lot if Lamar is not playing in this game. So that's something you want to keep an eye on here. Low total of 39.5. I'm on the Browns here in this spot, Mackenzie. This is one of the top 5 biggest mismatches in the Trench Report. Not a big mismatch, but I just think that this is a game where Baltimore wants to get out with a win and survive. This could be an ugly game in Cleveland. This is an elite pass rush, we know. This is an elite run-stopping unit, we know. And you have much more bigger games coming up. You have certainly high aspirations of making the postseason and rallying from the bad start that you've had this season. I don't think they want to get into any type of ugly type of game here with the Browns. I can see Cleveland keeping it close, and it'll be a low-scoring kind of 20-10 or not 20-10, maybe like a 20-14 or 17-14 type win here for the Baltimore Ravens.
Yeah, I don't think they want to get any more exposed than they have to, especially at the quarterback position where Lamar Jackson's been banged up. He's never played 17 games in a season, and he's never won a Super Bowl. Those things are connected somehow. Since he's been back from his knee injury, he has 36 rushing yards and less than that. I just had this 14 rushing yards. His number is adjusted, so they are looking at it. It's not the 50 that it's usually. It's 31.5, but I would still look under. If that's too low for you, if you just like to bet overs, I think they try to get Derrick Henry going, both to protect Lamar Jackson for the long haul, and also because he's kind of, Chris, he must have been like a top 3 fantasy running back. He hasn't been that this season. I think to get where they want to go, those expectations coming into the season where they were road favorites at Buffalo, they need that 1-2 punch, especially that number 2 punch in Derrick Henry.
Yeah, I definitely think so. He struggled a decent bit, which is kind of concerning me a little bit. Like, is he finally slowing down after all these years where he's kind of defied the odds age-wise? Keaton Mitchell, the backup, has been very explosive in his limited opportunities. But I agree. It's hard to look past Henry in this matchup here. To score a touchdown, -125, just to like get his confidence going again. I feel like that's where I'd look, just because it's like the Browns defense is pretty good. The inefficiency has worried me a little bit. So I don't really know where I want to look for the Ravens right now, because like Lamar did practice today on a Thursday. I think that's pretty positive in terms of where he's looking for Sunday. But again, like this is a tough Browns defense. They were kind of embarrassed last week against the Jets. I think they come out in a divisional game and put up a better effort being back at home. So those are the areas that I might look like. I don't know, man. Like I had Judy unders last week, and he wound up getting 12 targets. So they made a clear effort to go back to him. I think it could disappear easily again, but I kind of want to stay off that. So the way Dylan Gabriel, he just hasn't played well. Maybe Harold Fannin overs could be worth a look, but this might be a game I just completely stay away from prop-wise.
On them being home, great stat on the Browns. 17 points per game since 2023 defensively, like an elite number, versus 30 points per game like they gave up against the Jets last week. So if you like the Browns side, you got to play them at home, like in this matchup.
All right. Chiefs are at the Broncos, marquee matchup here in the AFC West. And the Broncos, 3.5-point home dogs here to the Kansas City Chiefs. I think this is a disrespectful line, Mackenzie. If we play the whole reverse the spread, let's just play this out. I'm going to play devil's advocate here, okay? Mile High is a significant home field advantage. Now, we know it's not 3 points anymore for home field. It's about 1.5 to 1 to 1.5, depending. But certain stadiums, Lambeau, Mile High, Minnesota, even Kansas City, get about 2 points for home field. Those are significant home field advantages. So, with the Chiefs being 3.5-point favorites, we're saying if this game was played on a neutral site, then Kansas City would be 5.5-point favorites. Now, let's toss that into Arrowhead, where there's a 2-point probably, upgrade for their significant home field. Would we lay 7.5 in a game between the Chiefs and the Broncos? I don't think so. Not the way this Broncos line has played this season.
I mean, when this line came out and it was Chiefs -2.5, it didn't shock me, but it also wouldn't shock me if it was Broncos -2.5, and these were considered even teams. It's 8-2 versus 5-4. I know that's not just about the record, but the Broncos have played better this season with a harder schedule. And looking at Neflo, a great NFL analytics website, the last 5 years, number 1 home field advantage in the league was Ford Field. We know how the Lions do on Fast Track. Yep. Number 2 was a name I've never heard of. Empower Field, I've been calling it Invesco still, Mile High, but I guess it's Empower Field now. But yeah, second best offense, home field advantage for the Broncos. I almost never bet against Patrick Mahomes when the line's less than a touchdown, but I don't know how you could explain to me how there's value on the Chiefs here. When it moved from 2.5 to 3.5, despite the Broncos winning and the Chiefs being off a bye, this seems like a pros versus Joes situation.
I would agree with that. Chris, where are you going from a prop angle in this matchup?
This is a tough one. I mean, Pacheco missed practice again. I don't think he's going to play. I think there could be some value here in a Chiefs team that's implied for a decent amount of points for Kareem Hunt, plus 105-ish to score a touchdown. I think there could be some value there. The Chiefs are projected for 24 points right now. The Broncos all the way down to 20.5. I understand like the pros versus Joes thing here, but like, and maybe I'm just being a Joe, but like, isn't this like one of the worst like 8-2 teams you've ever seen before? Because I feel like it's just like this team does not.
They got a little lucky.
Yeah, I mean, even against the Raiders, they struggled to pull that game out. One of the worst teams in the league. So I think the Chiefs coming off that Bills loss, coming off the bye, like read off a bye, we kind of want to bet into. I think I want to bet into like no Surtain again. The Chiefs offense pass game is going to have a little bit of a bounce back here is what I'm willing to bet on.
What do you think about Bo Nix? Because I've been all over the place. I thought he was terrible, like bottom 5. And then I'm like, I guess since the Giants game, he's been all right. And then Thursday Night Football, I laid 9, and I left that game thinking he's the worst quarterback in football. The market did too. Again, downgraded massively despite the win. Was he exposed? Is this the real Bo Nix?
I think Bo Nix in good matchups can put up a lot of like stats. I think he's kind of like borderlining on the Blake Bortles from like years back, where he was like high draft pick, had a lot of flaws. Sean Payton has not been trusting him to throw the ball down the field. He's been really inefficient throwing it deep, and that's where a lot of the issues have come out. Like a lot of these are kind of like not trick plays, but like they're more schemed up plays than anything else to the short areas of the field. So I think like Bo Nix is kind of, I don't know. He's when things are going good, he looks good. He's putting up numbers, but when things go bad, they go really bad. Yep. And Spagnuolo and this defense coming to town, I think the Broncos offense is going to struggle more than anything else. So I mean, it's tough because like how many good starting quarterbacks really are there in the NFL right now? But yeah, I think he's definitely been a little disappointing when you look past the 8-2 record.
All right, final game, Sunday Night Football. It's a good one. The Lions at the Eagles. Philly, a 2.5-point favorite up on FanDuel, total of 46.5. And one of the things that I noticed last week is, Chris, after the game, it was acknowledged that Dan Campbell took over the play calling for the Detroit Lions. And what did we see? We saw more Jameson Williams in this offense. We saw, obviously, Jahmyr Gibbs with a significant role as well, which he's going to have every single week. But I want to go to the J-Mo thing for a second. Yep. Because 2 weeks ago, it was John Morton, the offensive coordinator, coming out and saying, we need to get Jameson Williams more involved in our offense. They lose the game. He does go over his receiving prop, and he scores a touchdown. And then the following week, last week, with Dan Campbell calling the plays now, by far his highest usage, his highest target share of the entire season. I think sometimes when an offensive coordinator is speaking, it's the head coach's words coming out of his mouth. Because we heard Morton say they got to get J-Mo involved. Okay, they got him involved pretty much a little bit, more so in the second half. And then when Dan Campbell takes over, who do they get more involved? Jameson Williams. So I think some of my favorite props in this game are Jameson Williams over his receiving yardage prop. I like Jameson Williams over his longest reception at 22.5. Dan Campbell wants to get his playmaker involved, and we've seen it now 2 weeks in a row. I think we see it again here against the Eagles.
Yeah, I think from a long-term rest of season perspective, I'm extremely bullish on Jameson Williams. I mean, you said a lot of it already, is that Dan Campbell was like J-Mo's biggest advocate during the offseason. He's why a lot of fantasy rankers had him very high. And he disappointed a lot just in terms of his usage, his target volume, etc. And I think you have to look at like, okay, you can come out and say, we want to get Jameson Williams the ball more, but like, what are you doing to get him the ball more? You can't just tell Jared Goff, hey, throw it to J-Mo more, because like if you're having J-Mo run clear out routes and Amon-Ra's wide open underneath every single time, well, you're going to throw it to Amon-Ra. So what we saw in this last game was Jameson Williams starting to take some of those intermediate short routes away. Like they ran J-Mo on some crosser routes, some slant routes, which they weren't doing before. So you see his route tree expanding, which is going to lead to more targets. Even after the game, Jared Goff was like, oh, if you run Jameson Williams on crosser routes, it's like a cheat code. And like, why did it take the OC that long to figure it out? I think that's why Dan Campbell wound up taking over the play calling duties because of like something so simple as that they just weren't doing. So yeah, like I hesitate a little bit because this week, because the Lions are on the road, they're outdoors, and the Eagles defense is pretty good, right? Like solid, pretty good defense. So like
not against the pass though. Remember they signed Quinyon Mint. They signed Jair Alexander to pair up opposite Quinyon Mitchell. He practiced all week, and then all of a sudden, 2 days before the game or a day before the game, they're like, "Yeah, he's not going to play for us." And then what happens? Jair Alexander steps away from football. So the Eagles are like scrambling to figure out like what they're going to do in their secondary. It's kind of a makeshift unit right now in their secondary.
On the season, they have the 26th defense against the pass, Wow, that really shocked me to see.
What stat is that? Like just EPA?
Actually, correction, 26th against the rush. Wow, exactly the opposite of what I just said. I'm glad that you're paying attention to the numbers. You're like, that doesn't sound right. They have a decent secondary. Since week 7, again, I have that split open, 18th against the pass, but ignore what I just said.
Yeah. I just I don't think it's like Washington is like a secondary you just throw all over against no matter what. You're going to have success. On the road in Philly, outdoors, Jared Goff, like those things, like they make me hesitate a tiny bit. But absolutely, I think that Jameson Williams is worth a look either way. When you look at the differential in terms of the receiving yards, Amon-Ra around 75.5, Jameson Williams less than 50. Yeah, like that's definitely the same thing I mentioned with Jordan Addison before. Is like that's definitely a player, his type of skill level, explosiveness that I'm willing to bet over on for sure. I want to buy Jameson Williams in fantasy football because after this week, the Lions, I believe, closed the fantasy regular season through week 17 with 6 straight games in a dome. And I think that they're absolutely going to tear it up offensively during that stretch. So I might just want to buy in now for sure. I'm definitely all about Jameson Williams going forward.
Mackenzie, any thoughts on this matchup, a potential NFC Championship game preview?
Man, the Eagles' stats, even though they don't have the 26th defense against the pass, they're pretty underwhelming. It's kind of like, do you believe in magic? Like, do you believe this team will always like come up with exactly the 10 points they need? So I lean towards the Lions, even though it's a bad matchup for them. Sunday Night Football on the road. I'm a numbers guy, and statistically, they're the 5th best team if I average out all the metrics I'm looking at, where the Eagles are the 12th. And this line says the Eagles are a point better. I kind of disagree with that.
Most shocking stat: the Philadelphia Eagles are going 3 and out more than any offense in the NFL this season, and actually at a rate that is higher than any offense in the NFL going back to 2014.
4-dimensional chess, 4-degree chess, 4-dimensional chess. Yeah. They want their defense not to get too lazy, so they keep them running back out there.
The play calling has been just god awful for Philly ever since Kellen Moore left. But their pace of play has gone down, so they're running even slower. They're taking less chances through the air, even though their rushing inefficiency has been very bad. You saw the clip that came out this past week was that AJ Brown was like on a video stream playing video games. And he's like, oh, yeah, if you got me on your fantasy team, get rid of me. Like, it's like they just won a Super Bowl. Wow. And he's just like hates his life. You know what I mean? Like, it's funny. It's funny because you want the ball. And I'd be pissed off, too, if I was one of the, you have one of the highest paid receivers in the league. You know, AJ Brown, Devontae Smith are making tons of money right now. They're not really throwing them the ball. I don't think AJ Brown has really diminished much talent-wise. But is it a Hurts thing? Is it a play calling thing? I tend to think it's more of a play calling thing, but maybe a mix of both. Hopefully the Lions can push them a little bit because AJ Brown and Devontae Smith could each go off easily for 100+ yards a game if they actually got the pass volume to do so, and they just really haven't much this season.
Great stuff there from Chris. You can check out his website, bettingpredators.com. Chris has a lot of props packages and fantasy stuff up on the website, his fantasy rankings he releases on Twitter, Mad Journalist. You guys can follow him, 2Ds in Mad. Speaking of props, we will be sending out a prop sheet to all of you Better Day subscribers coming up likely later on today or tomorrow when more props become available to get you ready for betting all of those props coming up on Sunday. Later on today, College Football Friday will be with Jared Smith will be with me on the pod, and you'll get the Football Friday Part 2, the college football newsletter, coming up later on today. As always, head to betterday.com, check out the databases and the trench report and everything that we offer for you guys, and stay tuned for more exciting announcements. I cannot personally wait. For Mackenzie Rivers, Chris Dell, who joined us earlier, I'm Scott Seidenberg. Here's hoping you make today and every day a better day.